Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Java Chat. We got a good one for you today. I swear I'm going to call Steve Harvey and see if I can borrow that just for the licensing. We have Katherine Jansen-Byrkit here. Katherine has a master's in public health from the University of Washington. She got that back in '92. She spent over a decade in public health managing violence prevention and teen health programs. Okay, first off, thank you for doing that because that's like huge. That's very needed. Over time, she experienced an inner stirring. What ensued was a process of reflection, curiosity, and ultimately trust as she dove into her current career as a licensed professional counselor, which I assume you still are.
I am.
Okay. And following in the footsteps of her father, who was also a therapist. Well, this is cool. Who was also a therapist. She graduated in 2004 from Lewis and Clark. Awesome. And has now been in private practice for like 17 years. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Offering not only holistic psychotherapy, but retreats and workshops as well. This is cool. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Katherine Jansen-Byrkit. Thank you so much for joining us here on Java Chat.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is you're going to have to go into a bit of how this all played out. Obviously, I just kind of read a little bio, but I mean, that's a journey.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a journey.
Tell us how this all unfolded. I mean, obviously Dad was a therapist. Did you ever think you were going to follow him and just kind of take off into that realm?
No, and it was actually in a personal retreat that the kind of call from the universe, I call it, came to me
Cool.
when we were I was 39 years old and really happy in public health, had kind of my life pretty situated, had great benefits, and it just really came to me. And so I was surprised. So, I've been in therapy just working with my trauma, and I can share more about that, what my journeys look like. So in that way, I'm not surprised. But no, I was actually going to be an attorney, and then I took a health class, and it was like health kind of grabbed me.
What a shift, though. I mean, you think about it, that's completely divergent. If you look at it, you're talking legal and health. One not really at all associated with the other.
No, exactly. And when I went to Lewis and Clark, there was an attorney who was in his early 60s deciding to go into like, okay, I've done that, like left brain stuff.
I've had enough of that.
It's time to do something different. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So what was that moment like? I mean, obviously you're off at a retreat and all of a sudden because everybody's experience is different. Some people it's just a thought and all of a sudden they move. Some people it's an actual experience and all of a sudden it's like, okay, what do I do now? Kind of thing.
Well, I'm going to tell you a story that's pretty intense about how they run those kinds of moments because I was in a small group.
Okay.
So you're to name this dream and it's just like, I want to be a therapist. And it just kind of came out of my, like, it just got clear. But this is what's weird, Mike. Instead of what you would think on a personal retreat where everybody's just like, you can do it. Yay, go Katherine.
Right.
Their focus was, you as a small group, and we did this with each other, you need to tell her you can't do it. You don't deserve it. You already have a master's degree. What are you thinking? What about the children? To the point where it revved up an engine inside of me. It was a very intense personal retreat.
Yeah.
Where
yeah,
I
no
was
doubt.
like, I can do it. Yeah, it grew such a yes, such a resounding yes, that then when I got home to my husband, who was not in resistance to it, but kind of like, really? I'd already there was nothing anybody could say. I got so clear. So it was a really counterintuitive kind of way.
That's a very counterintuitive type of retreat. I mean, I get the premise of what they're doing. They're literally taking the inside normal imposter voice and putting it outside so that your body goes, no, we're doing this. Yeah, that's right. I get that premise. That's gotta have been holy crap. That's intense. Okay. Yeah. So you come home and your hubby's looking at you like, all right, what now? And where does it go from there? I mean, it wasn't Lewis and Clark that you were Or was that where you were picking up the?
That's where I got my master's.
Okay.
And I thought, I want to go, and there's so many great programs when you take
Sure.
on psychotherapy, especially I kind of have a spiritual component to my practice and certainly in my own life. And so there's just great programs, but I also was raising children, working still at the health department. And so Lewis and Clark is a great school, but what wasn't my first choice became really, really a great fit. And that was 3 miles from my house. So I was thrilled.
You were doing this while building your family?
Oh yeah, I have 6 children. They weren't all living with me. Yes, we're a blended family. So raising children, still working. I was literally on field trips, reading a chapter, and then going to the pumpkin patch, and then, on the bus with the first graders, doing homework with my children. It was a different kind of experience.
I would say it's a different kind of experience, but you get super focused when you get that though. And I've seen this before. You get this in super focus kind of, or hyper focus as it's called in some cases, where even in the midst of all of the chaos, it's still somewhat organized.
Oh, totally. And, it was close to home. And, there's an energy when you are tapped into a calling. And I feel lucky because I work with many people, and certainly even friends, or sometimes some of my, now they're all adult children, have like, what am I here for? Like, what's my purpose? And that's always been low-hanging fruit for me. It was clearly I was going to be an attorney, and then it was clearly that I was to be involved in health, and then this. So, and I just want to give a shout out to one of my main crises happened at 16 years old. So I quit high school. So part of how I am so glad for my educational journey is I don't have a high school diploma. I have a GED, and But
you still have a master's and a doctorate, right?
2 masters.
Two masters, dual.
Yeah.
Hey guys, did you hear that? A GED can kill it. Did you hear that? That's the truth of the matter. There's no excuses. Please continue. I'm sorry. I had to say that.
No worries. No worries at all. Yeah. So how I'm also here is I wrote a book kind of about my journey, and it wasn't so much that I had ever planned for that either. That also came to me about 10 years ago as this just needs to be what I ultimately offer my children, because I can't be their therapist, but it really came to me as here's the book. It's on wakefulness. It includes an inner world stuff, outer world stuff. So it's a lot of actually what I work with within my practice,
What's the title of the book?
The title of the book is very Pacific Northwestern, River to Ocean, Living in the Flow of Wakefulness. So the first few aspects of wakefulness are like, the first one is relationship to ourselves, freedom from the mind, because so many people get trapped in, they're at the mercy of their thinking, and then mindfulness.
Can we dig into that for a second? Because I swear that's totally going on so much right now. That whole thing people have become so distracted with themselves and with everything that's going on around them that I swear that just right there is none. I mean, I know that's a very general statement, but it just seems like nobody cares. They're not paying attention to anything. And they're paying attention to all the outside voices, and that's completely swayed them off of what they're supposed to be, who they're supposed to be, and where they're headed. I mean, am I calling that pretty right?
Yeah, I just, the mind and our culture that actually kind of worships thinking, that's a strong word, but I think it's
I think it's pretty damn close. I think it's close.
But then if we marry that, Mike, with the fact that the research has said that at some crazy level, the content of our thoughts are inaccurate.
Yeah.
So the mind, talk about fake news. If our mind is telling us lies and we do not have capacity to either understand that thoughts need to sometimes stream by, don't own your thoughts and don't let them own you, or actually have practices where we challenge our thoughts. Like, just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. And if I'm depressed or I'm anxious, did that depression or anxiety precede the thought or follow the thought?
Right.
If I have depressive thoughts, I'm going to have even a body experience. If I have anxious thoughts, it doesn't mean that there are not, obviously with COVID, things are uncertain. So some of that's real stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But just having, it really was needed to be the second chapter, relationship to self, and then immediately working with the mind, because that's so much where our mental health lies. or mental illness and lack of peace.
I swear that's where a lot of the latter generations behind us, because when we were growing up, forgive me for going down this road, and I come from the islands. You had problems. It was suck it up, take a lap, do some push-ups or something like that. There was no mental health in our years. I mean, yeah, there were therapists, and I saw mine too back in the day, but it wasn't a huge thing. And it's become such a huge thing that the now generations over focus on it. And just what you said right there, with a depressive thought happens. Was your depression before or after that?
Mm-hmm.
And I swear
Exactly.
they don't pay attention to it. They wait that the thought comes and they're depressed after, or their anxiety comes after. And it's like, oh, I have anxiety attacks. I'm like, well, look at what you're thinking about.
That's right. Well, sometimes my clients are shocked when I'm like, of course you're depressed. Of course you're anxious. Sounds like things are working exactly as they would, but I can help you with that.
I'm pulling my buddy from Brooklyn. What about this? Do you not understand?
Yeah, exactly. I guess I would also say we don't have enough of maybe the right way to be in terms of what I would frame as mental health as a mental health provider. I don't even think of myself as kind of a mental health worker. I think of myself as a healer. I think of myself accompanying people and undoing aloneness. I educate people on their inner process so that they don't need eventually to pay me. They begin to understand their whole system differently.
What I want? You know what gets me? I want to find out, why is not what you're talking about right now being taught to our youth? Why is it not out there? I don't see it.
Well, yeah, that's a good point.
Because by the time they get to you, it's like you've already taken the shot over the edge. I got to bring you back from the edge.
Right. Something like one of the key parts in relationship to self is worth. So by the time I meet people, they not only have stopped believing they're good enough. They live in a culture where we have to prove our worth. It comes from something. If we were a baby and didn't think we were good enough, we wouldn't cry. The other baby next to us would have been better than us. We didn't, it's not innate. We have innate worth, but those conditioning forces then become, if that's what I believe, then I have this thing in my mind called confirmation bias. And I keep experiencing evidence in my life that will reinforce the current belief system I have. So a whole lot of therapy to me is about remodeling and looking at the inner scaffolding.
Is that confirmation bias? It's interesting you run down that, because it runs around in my world a lot. And I'm not in health. I'm in marketing.
Oh, so it is everywhere.
It runs a lot in our industry. When you're talking about your mind's looking for it, you're gonna find it. You remember I had a critical thinking professor back in college that told us, hey, by the way, your mind looks for what you tell it to look for. So on your way home, you guys look for Mercedes-Benz, and I want to see how many of you guys see tomorrow. We all came back. Everybody saw like 4 or 5, maybe 6. And he's like, all right, how many Toyotas did you see? Nobody could remember.
Oh, I love it. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, not to frighten your listeners, but this is how powerful confirmation bias is.
They're big people. They can handle it.
Okay. I love this. Yes. They've had their coffee, right?
That's right. They better have their coffee if they want to be listening to this.
That's right. And I have a funny story about coffee too, to tell you if you want to hear it.
Yes, I do.
But not only experiencing like confirmation bias, the mind selects out contradictive evidence. And then the step further, we create evidence to support. So when I go to the yoga class, because I have a belief that I don't belong, a core belief, because I have that belief, I behave in a way, right? I might come late. I definitely sit at the back.
Yeah.
I don't engage with people because I have this sense of I'm on the outside looking in. Now, if you're in the middle of the yoga class, is that the person you're going to walk up to? You probably think, wow, they need to kind of, right? So then it's like, wow, no one's interacting with me. Yeah. I set it up. And now this is actually direct experience. It's not even the mind.
Yep.
It's actually that, everybody seemed to be, talking to each other and the teacher, and I got left out again. So that is heartbreaking to me.
It is.
That the system works like that. But again, once we know the system in a loving way, we can be the master of our mind.
Absolutely.
It's not about not having a mind. If I didn't have a mind, we wouldn't have had this appointment. Like, it really is a great tool, thinking, but it is not the be all end all.
It's interesting that you put it that way. It's a really wonderful tool, thinking. Just, there's some days where I wonder if that word is actually used when people are progressing in their life, because you just look at them and go, my head hurts. Why did you do that? Why did you say that? Why did you think that? Why,
Yeah.
And it's, and you gotta kind of wonder, and I do it to myself too. Like you said, we have our own self conversations. I think at my age now, I've had more walks down by the river with myself than I ever have. To basically go, okay, what was that?
Right. Well, and what I guess I would say, and this is kind of little, I'm the therapist on your show, so I'll give the plug for psychotherapy and understanding psychodynamics. When we're thinking, what aren't we doing? We're not feeling in our body, and our body actually, there's more and more research that says our body is cueing us, and there is no separated parts of the brain anymore. They're all working together. And what also aren't we doing when we're thinking? We're not feeling. And emotions are not just about, oh, I feel, that's good. Feelings, once they're truly experienced, core emotions, it leads to adaptive action. So actually that is behavioral. But if I shut down my emotions, because I'm always in my head and thinking those untrue thoughts that I don't challenge, then I'm really kind of screwed, because so much of my system cannot give me what I need to navigate my life.
And that works both ways. I mean, if you can't separate the two, they have to work together. I mean, there are people that I have good friends. They're like, if you ever have to make a decision about a woman, don't listen to your heart, listen to your head. And I'm like, yeah, but if I do that, I'm not feeling anything, and my head's just going to be thinking one thing. And it may not be correct. He says,
well, the other thing is, this idea of more integrative, holistic existence and living and decision making and engaging. And so there's another one too, which is intuition. Like and that may not at all make logical sense, but as
a lot of times it doesn't, from what I've learned.
But it was not that many years ago. I don't know which island you're speaking of, but the Hawaiian island I was on.
That's where I'm from.
I probably saved my life and my husband's life just by not getting into what looked like waves that were fine and safe. And then I got the no, and he got really tumbled in the crevice with the lava, but there weren't two of us. And so it's so powerful to start to access all of our existence and what that brings to our life.
This is first off, I'm already having fun. This is big. We do need to take a short 30-second break. We're going to take a short pause, guys, and we'll come back, and you guys know about the second section. We're going to start getting into the whys, the inspirations, what inspires Katherine, and what keeps her moving on this. So we'll be back in 30, and we'll keep digging. And we're back here, Java Chat, visiting with Katherine Jansen-Byrkit. She is a mental health therapist. How would you describe yourself?
Well, if per license, a licensed
but I mean,
counselor, right?
That's
but
a
psychotherapist.
Psychotherapist, okay.
Yeah.
And
I hope to be coach, healer, friend. I mean, there's a lot in the mix when you do deep work.
I think friend is absolutely the best goal to be. Just in general, no matter who you're working with. I tend to move into that realm. Some people in business tell me, oh, you can't be everybody's friend. I'm like, well, I can be a friendly acquaintance. That's good enough.
There you go. Yes. And when I sat with my dad before he passed, and he did never do private practice, but there was a little bit of an overlap between when he was done and I said, Dad, just what's your advice? Like, what's going on in the room? He just looked at me and he said, Katherine, just love him.
Yeah.
Just love them. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to say that, but that's a felt experience. And that is so therapeutic. There's such aloneness right now in the world.
Yep.
And isolation, even in a way we do life and can do life. And COVID hasn't helped that. So yeah, friend.
COVID's only exasperated it.
Yeah.
So this section, we usually talk about what motivates, what inspires, like who were some of the people you looked up to, maybe some of the books that you've read that have driven you along your path to where you're at now. And then maybe we can talk a little bit more about some of the things, like you mentioned the big one, aloneness. I swear that's been driven by fear. In our days, it was just don't talk to strangers. Now it's don't talk to anybody. And it's like, when the hell did that come in? So
yeah.
What are some of the things that have pushed you in this direction? And then what keeps you going?
Well, I got pushed in this direction because I was suicidal and attempted suicide at 16 and had to climb my way out through a GED, through leaving Roseburg, Oregon and moving to San Francisco, to not being 200 pounds anymore and starting to not violate my body through food addiction. So many teachers along the way. I would say Tara Brach, who actually I thankfully endorsed my book, she does a lot of work around the trance of unworthiness. She's both a Buddhist herself and a psychotherapist, does lots of retreats. She's Radical Acceptance is a book she wrote long ago. And my own therapist, I give a shout out to David Rico. He also was a psychotherapist in Santa Barbara. He wrote The 5 Things You Cannot Change and the Happiness You Find by Embracing Them. Bernay Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection. Those of us.
I'm going to need all the titles to these books.
I love this, right? Those of us that struggle with perfectionism as a response to a felt sense of unworthiness.
Where did that start?
Well, it starts with usually some kind of fracture to the sense of self. But it's interesting because one of my children, a couple of them were readers for my book, and I have in my book a section on intrinsic worth. Then I have practices because I believe we can't just have ideas. We actually have to
do something.
We have to create the neural pathways. But then I have a story, and I had one of my clients, by permission, obviously without his real name, tell his story about how he didn't feel worthy and he had an absent father. That's kind of the classic. There's a very strong, but my daughter read it and she said, Mom, at 25, and she was like 27, I didn't know I was worthy, but I did have 2 loving parents. I had parents telling me I was worthy. So she said, you need a story in your book for people like me that don't understand why they don't feel good enough. And so that was helpful. So I put her story in the book because that can happen through a lot of different sources, not always a divorce or abuse or an absent parent or that kind of thing. So I think it's a really big and important question and drives so much, because even the loneliness idea, if I don't feel good enough, then my own sense of insecurity is going to promote social anxiety, because I'm so afraid you might reject me because I reject me, not love me or like me because I don't love or like me. Even though you don't know that, I'm projecting all of that onto you. And that's going to create a lot of anxiety that might, compromise how well I engage. It's not the be all end all, but man, if I were to pick one thing.
I think that's probably one of the biggest things. And I don't know if you just saw my face, but I just had a realization. I've been a single dad for a long time. My son's now 19. And he still struggles with a couple of things. And it's always been my fear that in the midst of all of the stuff that he had to deal with, changing schools all the time, having to work himself through a divorce that, wasn't his fault. And I'm going to have him read that book. If I can get him to read.
What's on Audible? I just got it on Audible with a great narrator.
Sounds good. He's an online kid. He's a Gen Z. And they're interesting the way they learn. They're masters of group work. I mean, there was actually a study done on it where they brought a bunch of Gen Zs together, sat them down, gave them a subject to research, and it was interesting. It was 5 of them. 4 started talking, and the last one got on a computer and started running Google. And they got their project framework done. Lickety split, no problem. These they didn't know each other. They were just tasked with it, and they went for it. And I was like, That's amazing. You couldn't have done that with me in my generation. We'd have just looked at each
Yeah.
other and went, "You on your own. See you later."
Right.
we
Yeah,
were
there's
that way.
something about how they do it, right?
It really is. But when it comes to himself, it's hard to get him to do anything. I mean, he has his little things, but
Right.
that's about it. So
Well, and I try to promote, not like I want, I'm not glad for what happened to me when my dad left in a very unfortunate way at 14, which really was the fracture for me. It was pretty much a light bulb moment, because he inadvertently, as an alcoholic, though we didn't see his over drinking, kind of made it my sisters and my father. He's like, I'm leaving you.
Oh, wow.
Not just your mom. I can't do family. Like,
Right.
yeah, that was and then of course, 2 years later, I'm 200 pounds and suicidal, of course.
I wonder why. Yeah.
I wonder why. But I also, because of that trauma, because of the work of trauma that your son and others can do, and 19, I wasn't ready to maybe do all the work, feel all the pain, because with trauma, you have to be willing to re-experience some of what happened. But I also didn't, the therapists I was working with at the time they're well-intended, but they basically just sat with me and I talked. I didn't learn about what, other than reading the books I did, worth, a sense of relationship to self, a sense that 19-year-old Katherine, or whatever-year-old Katherine, needed to talk to that 14-year-old who at 13 thought she was good enough, and at 14 got confused.
Right.
That's called parts work. So again, I'm really about, like, trauma is so hard, but it is such a platform by which such deep things can happen within ourselves. And now, with a relationship to myself, when I take my final breath, I know I'm going to be with myself in a way that undoes another kind of aloneness that I never would have had before if I hadn't had that trauma and had to go inside and heal that trauma.
So the allergies are playing again. We have, when we all have them, this thing where we've made mistakes. Sometimes we learn from them, sometimes we don't. Hopefully we do. And those mistakes lead to regret. There have been a couple of times where people have asked me, well, what do you regret in your life? And I'm thinking, I regret a lot of shit in my life, but I don't dwell on them, because unless you bring them up, I don't think about them. I don't have the time. But you say that there's a way to make peace with that, so that there's not an emotional anchor on it. Does that make sense?
It totally does, because, well, and this isn't challenging you on that, but more invitational for you, Mike. If you don't think about it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist inside of you.
It does.
And where there's regret, there can be shame. And shame is really a toxic emotional experience, where guilt, and this always surprises people, because I don't believe there are truly negative emotions. There are core emotions, and each one has its place. If I didn't have regret, a system that cued me, or if I didn't have a system that helped me feel guilty, which is kind of in the family of sadness, like say I cut somebody off on the freeway, I feel a little guilty. I frightened somebody. I changed my driving. Had I not felt guilty, but that's not a steady state of guilt. That's a wave of guilt, change behavior. That's a 5-second, that's done. So first of all, I would say we need to befriend and sit with our regrets and guilt as sometimes a very adaptive and helpful response to a situation. Where it's appropriate to do that, sometimes it involves making amends with somebody, whether it's a kid, a partner, a friend, even a client, right? But there's that other piece of learning from it, so that then I can forgive myself and putting those learnings into practice, so that not like I'm traveling through life recklessly so I can have a lot of regrets to work with, but regrets are our evolution. And they're not a problem without a problem story, but we do need to protect that sense of self from not harboring shame. There's a man who wrote a book called A Year to Live, and it's not because he was terminally ill, another book, that Stephen Levine, and it really is a powerful teaching. He said, those that I work with that are terminally ill, say they're given like a year to live, one of the things they change in their life, and they get real busy, like, okay, so right now, what is today, the 30th? Say you and I, Mike, are going to die. We know we're going to die on 2021 on October 30th. what does that inform about our life? Self-forgiveness, forgiving others, making amends, like finishing that unfinished business. And the premise of his book is, why do you have to wait till you're terminally ill? If you do that year, that's transformation.
Yeah.
So living from a place of not like tempting fate and death, but someday it will be our last year. And what a great life to know that I'm not traveling with unfinished business. So again, our regrets are going to inform where that unfinished business is. So thank you for that question. It's a really great question, and we don't have to be afraid of that.
Yeah, it's a deep one. I think a lot of people miss the fact that all you're doing is suppressing if you don't do those things. And I still have that stuff to work through too. Don't get me wrong.
Well, and let's go back and connect the dot maybe that if I have regret and guilt, so see, if I don't have worth, then my mistakes become confirmation bias, then I'm a bad person and I'm not good enough. But if I have intrinsic worth, my fallibility, I'm not afraid of that. So I can face it. And sometimes that's why it's such a far-reaching thing, worth. That's why I don't deal with my regrets, because it's going to be so toxic inside of me. I haven't made peace with my humanity and my imperfections.
Makes sense to me. So you got like some real deep passion for this, obviously. And as I said, this whole thing kind of leads into the why do you do this? I mean, what's the driver for you? I mean, other than you get it, this is your calling. I mean, what even callings for some people kind of phase out unless there's a why behind it. And what's yours?
Well, it isn't like a belief and then thank goodness I had a calling. It's like one needs purpose in life, you know, and what I experience and what I've always seen in my clinical practice, much less where I've seen even my kids before they found more of a sense of direction and purpose, those that didn't have clarity right away. It's part of, you know, having our feet on the ground and having a really powerful way to have a meaningful life. But purpose can be, you know, kindness to strangers as much as a professional trajectory.
Yep.
So I really throw a wide net with what that can be. And especially for people that don't really have it clear in a professional way, they need to purpose their life. There are many ways to arrive at that. So, but it's really compelling. Like I loved public health, but the bloom was a little bit fading now that I look back. So I was able to listen and keep being open to, especially with that retreat, my life going in a left turn. Like one more adventure my husband and I want to do, we want to live in another country.
Nice.
I'll have to see if I'm going to do that, because we'll see how that relates. A nice dream. But we'll actually put some energy into starting with Costa Rica and Panama. What does that really look like? And now with Zoom, the upside of COVID, I can take my practice on the road. So I feel like adventuring and really listening, and, you know, to me, that's the why. It's an incredible way to experience life, and certainly unconventional, as my life has always been, starting with that GED.
That's just huge. And by the way, Costa Rica, yes, go do it. Definitely. I've got friends that are down there now, and I've got other friends to move there. I keep getting invitations. I'm probably going to go down there to go look at a development that we're talking about working on. It's amazing. Let's put it that way. So yeah, definitely at least give it a shot and a visit. If you don't get to live down there, go down there and go check it out.
Well, or some hybrid of be there, you know, 2 to 4 months of the year in a community where you get to know that community and keep residency, you know, in the States. I have grandchildren, and, you know, I'll always have to see my mountains and see my Pacific Ocean. But, you know, when one of my kids just moved to Australia after doing study abroad, I'm like, wow, I went to San Francisco from Roseburg, Oregon, and I like broke the family code of not being an Oregonian. It wasn't even on my radar. I could go live in another country. And I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter that I'm 57. I want to turn. I want to do that. So darn it, I'm going to do it.
I'm deserving of it. Dang straight. Sure. I'm out. Peace.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, guys, we're going to take another short 30-second break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what Katherine's working on now, where she's headed, what she's thinking. She kind of gave us a little bit of thought about what she's thinking about doing, but we're gonna dig in a little bit to what she's actually doing. So in about 30 seconds, we'll be right back. Back here at Java Chat. hanging out with Katherine Jansen-Byrkit, talking about real cool stuff, because like we've been digging into all kinds of cool stuff with you when it comes to mental health and how to take care of things and how to perceive and how to actually frame thoughts and feelings, et cetera, and there's a ton more, guys. Trust me, this particular podcast format is too short to be able to do what I would like Katherine to do. But we're getting out as much as we can. So this last section is just basically talks about what you're doing now. What are you doing now? What are your goals? What are you working on? Where is Katherine headed?
Well, my beloved seventh child, my book, River to Ocean. So I'm proud of it. And I really feel like it has a place. So I'm doing podcasting, and we did just do the audio version of it only 2 months ago. So that was a process. So that, I kind of love what I do. My goal is to deeply enjoy. I'm not so far from retirement, actually, and my husband's a bit older than I. So if I just keep doing what I'm doing and just change up, like, wow, I do a retreat, but maybe I'm doing an international retreat, keep meeting people like you and keep kind of spreading the word of wakefulness. And my practice tends to run full, so it's not like I have more hours of the day. I have to actually watch that because I love the work so much.
Yeah.
I can be a little bit on that workaholic edge, and especially with Zoom, I have to take care of my body around it. But webinars, I'm kind of looking at that. How far can I take a virtual reality before it's really not the same experience as in person? And hopefully this time next year or even sooner, we'll have our leg over COVID, and we can start to begin to have group gathering safely.
Yes. Please, sometime soon.
Yeah,
Can we just get through this already?
Yeah. A challenge for me right now is just taking care of myself with the intensity of my practice, because people have, the statistics you're hearing are true. The suicide rate, the addiction rate, the marriages or relationships, really big challenges around how to do this long term. So that's real. And then I have to, I'm not raising children, trying to do homeschooling at the same time, but really keep taking good care of myself. If I can't go to movies, if I can't travel, and if that was sourced my happiness, then I have to keep doing what I invite my clients to do, which is find deeper and new ways to experience life as sometimes very hard and sometimes certainly truly scary, but also amazing and good.
Agreed. I have so many thoughts for you on what you can do with that. Being a marketer, I'm thinking, oh, there's an info product. Oh, there's a coaching program. Oh, there's this, there's that.
Let's talk. Hey, maybe working with you is in my future. I'll state that.
You know what? Anything's possible. It's just
go.
The idea of what you have as far as value to bring to the general populace, I think, is the awakening part that we kind of touched on a little bit. That is so necessary, because we're talking about, we've been taken out of our routine for 6 months at this point, almost completely. And we've been shut in when we're used to being open out into the world, going to work, being with friends, going out and being social, and even the introverts are starting to feel it. I mean, I've got friends that are, and they're just like, yeah, I'm not really digging this anymore.
It was really nice when everybody entered my world, right? And it's like, yeah, welcome, like, yeah, yay.
Yeah. And now it's like, yeah, you guys got to go. And so do I. I mean, so there's just, when you do that to I think this is just a human thing, human condition. We've been pulled from our routine. We've been given a routine we are completely unused to. And we don't know how to deal with it. And I think your information has to be out there in some form besides the book.
You. Well, there's I don't know if one of the podcasts I referenced it, a couple I did last week with one, there's research based on astronauts, very different, called third quarter isolation. And it's what happened to the astronauts in sustained isolation, because they're up there. Yeah. So they had anxiety, then they had depression, and then they got really restless and rowdy. And then they started feeling like, you're in your bubble and I'm in mine. I'm thinking you're mad at me right now. All this stuff started happening, the longer term effect. And so, yeah, we haven't done this before and we are doing it, but hopefully we learn from the first 6 months, as we may have another 6 months and going into winter.
Yep.
There are certainly silver linings with this. I see people deeply struggling with this, but also waking up. Some veils have really lifted. Maybe we do need marriage counseling, because now I've spent so much time with you. I can't just have mobility be a way I don't deal with some of our problems.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just realize I need to work at home or work less, or because I really now see, I can't even imagine not seeing my kids as much as I have. So I think we'll look back at this time and there will be a lot.
I find it very interesting that a lot of what people are calling the narratives that are out there now, when you have a human that lives in quote unquote normal stasis, it's easy to feed it to them and they'll take it. You put them in lockdown and you give them time to themselves. Suddenly, all of a sudden, they're just starting to question everything around them.
Yes. Well, and it kind of goes back to Araya Mountain. I'm forgetting the name, but it's a powerful poem called The Invitation, and one of the stanzas in it is, "Do you truly love the company you keep?" Kind of, can you also? It's really, we read it at the beginning of our retreats to just really have impact. And boy, truly keeping your own company, and especially for people that live alone and need to be COVID safe. But one of the cool things about this next stage and the holidays is we need to get out of judgment. We need to get honest with our choices. We need to be self-supporting of our choices, but know that, Mike, your choices may not work for me and my choices may not work for you. So we get to not judge. We get to be creative about, is there a collaborative way to stay connected or see each other or have holiday times or not. But what a great way to bridge differences right now, which our country and people have a hard time doing, to have a collaborative approach to decision making.
And there's a little statement that I learned, and I can't remember who taught it to me, following up the or not. And it's 3 words, and that's okay. And that's the part that's missing.
Yeah.
Everybody goes, or not, and that's not okay. You can't be that way. Whoa. It is okay.
Yeah. Live and let live.
You do
Actually,
you. I'll do me. Right. Even though we can't collaborate this way, it's okay. I still love you. You're still a human.
Well, right. You have to make a choice of which is more important, your ideology or your relationships. And I'm not saying that I'm going to relax my principles and my core values.
That's not what that's
about. From a place
of
also not expressing them.
That's not what that's about. Exactly. Yep.
And if we do stay in our lane with not glaring at the lanes next to us, creating a sense of curiosity and respect, and actually within our family, my children, we're on a continuum of left-leaning, right-leaning. But the main thing is we would never choose out of relationship, and we can talk and be receptive and curious with each other. And so there's so much common ground. That's the sad thing for me, is because I had to do that as a couples therapist. I'd have 2 people, and because I always was committed to not taking a side, I literally in the middle of the couch would see a bubble and it would start to fill, and it was all the common ground, but they were off being super positional. I don't want a dog. You want a dog, like whatever it would be. And there was resonance towards each other's position, but it was all about power and control. So I love the idea of really working the common ground piece.
It always, it's what's really interesting to me is, and this is whether you're in personal life, you're in business life, or whatever life you happen to be in, what you just said right there, it's the common ground that you find the best position to work from, because from there, anything's possible. Yeah, I don't want a dog. All right, you don't want a dog. I still love you because you do this for me. Well, I still love you because I still do this for you. And you do this for me. And it's like, well, there you have it. This is where you begin to work from.
That's right. And, obviously in that kind of case, and it's funny because that was something that my husband and I had to, he would call an animal quote unquote, one more needy creature, which is kind of a famous thing in our family. I wanted to get t-shirts, needy creature, needy wife, needy creature number 1, needy creature number 2, needy dog
awesome.
number 1. But when we did a 2-year collaborative process, what was so powerful, and she's 2 years into our life now. And you had to get your ego aside, because I didn't know if I was going to get a dog. And it wasn't about the outcome. It was just about working together creatively. We did it so differently, and he doesn't resent that dog. Yes, you can't both have a dog and not have a dog, or have a baby and not have a baby. But it's really about how the process feels on the other side of a decision.
Yeah.
And win-win is a real feeling that we can have. And I don't ever use the word compromise, because that's usually like, well, you gave up as much as I did. And okay,
yeah,
it just has a
that's
very
not a
different
real
energy.
win. Yeah, it's not a real win.
No.
It's interesting that you use that, and the first thing that hits my mind was the old farmer versus the florist. The farmer looks at a flower and goes, "That's a weed," and the florist looks at the wheat and goes, "Ew."
Yeah, exactly.
Like, but they both have a purpose, you know.
That's right.
So
yeah.
I totally get that. So, where can people find you? Where, if somebody wants to come, I mean, obviously we're going to have your links below, but go ahead for those that are listening or watching. Where can people find you?
Well, I've never closed my practice, though it's full. So I don't know that I can literally offer, those professional services, but I do retreats and workshops, less now, but we'll have webinars. Maybe I'm kind of thinking about developing that.
Sure.
But on my website, I'm on different podcasts now. So
Awesome.
I'm kind of more active in that. And
I have a couple I'd like to get you to, as Sean Douglas has one called Life Transformation. You need to be on that one.
Wonderful. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, he's a great guy too. You'll totally enjoy him.
Yeah. And my book, actually, one of the public health things about my book was I believe in affordability, and whether I don't trust counselors, I can't afford a counselor, I can't drive to one, or I don't want to do telehealth. I do think books like mine and the ones I've mentioned are powerful resources for transformation.
Awesome.
And we've kind of stopped reading. Luckily, there's audio now.
Yeah.
That's fine. If you don't want to pick up a physical book, it's better for the planet. But
I don't have a choice. I got 3 and Audible. It's like,
oh, there you go. Right. Yeah.
And then, so
I would say that.
They can, you're on Facebook, and you're on Twitter. So, we'll be following you.
Okay.
You're on LinkedIn.
I'm not very active, so you're my little encouragement.
Not a problem. Trust me, there's going to be plenty of people following you. You start putting out any content. LinkedIn, if anybody wants to connect with her there, we need to connect there for sure. Yeah. And I believe you have a website,
Harbor Glow Holistic. So Energy Counseling is my counseling business. Harbor Glow Publishing is the publishing company I created so I could publish my book. My husband's a chiropractor, so we decided, because he works in our little space that we created, to have one website. Yeah, with the two of us here. So perfect. Harbor Glow Holistic.
Perfect. The time runs way too fast sometimes.
Oh, it does.
I have one more question for you, though. In your business right now, obviously you're doing fine. I mean, as far as being full up with clients and stuff like that. But what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now in your business?
Well, it's what I guess I referenced before. I'm human too, and not that I process what goes on for me with my clients. So I'm pretty unconventional there too, compared to which it's
not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all.
Thank you.
It's not a bad thing.
Those professionalism has got to really hit refresh.
Yeah.
And what we understand, what that looks like. But the challenge of doing pretty much now in the winter my entire full practice on Zoom, and any retreats, that is just a walk. It's not what I signed up for. I had a little tantrum like 6 weeks ago. My body had a tantrum. I'm like, I didn't sign up for this. It's like, well, thank goodness you could do it, because my husband could Zoom his chiropractic practice.
Yeah, right. I'd like you to adjust your L5. Just turn a little bit this way for me.
Pardon me?
I was like,
exactly.
Just a little more.
Can you remember how this adjustment felt? Right. Bump up against that wall.
Woo.
That's funny. I'm going to tell him that.
I'm sure he'll get a kick out of it.
Yeah. So that's the logistical challenge. I guess the deeper work is, but it keeps me on my toes, because I will never be a hypocrite. that if I can't find the good in life when life is hard, and life is quite dynamic right now, and gosh, we had forest fires, so we couldn't even go
Yes.
outside. That was our lovely reality. And so that was intense. You know, it's over. So I get to keep exploring what that is. And I need to keep really taking care of myself on a lot of levels, emotionally, physically,
Yep.
spiritually. So it's not even a challenge, I guess, to me. That's the opportunity.
Yeah, there you go. That's, and I'm so glad you said it that way. I hear a lot of times, although I put the question out as a challenge, I always look to see if somebody's really looking at it from the standpoint of, yeah, it's a challenge, but that also opens up a lot of doors. It always does, no matter how you look at it. I mean, that's what pivots are for. That's what new opportunities in any other realm might happen to pop up. You know, I've had trainers go from being private practice and all of a sudden they're making 5 figures in corporate training and they're booked out for 6 months. And I'm looking at them going, did we just have this conversation?
I love that.
Anything's possible. Cool. Well, I want to thank you once more for coming and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your insight, your story. It's amazing. I think there's a lot more to talk about, though. I don't think we covered more than like a mustard seed of this, and would probably love having you back if you're open to it.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more to be discussed, only because, again, we're dealing with a community of entrepreneurs and business professionals who are busy, even though they're home working remotely. They are busy, and they're missing over half of what we just talked about. So I think letting them in on the fact that the whole "and it's okay" is there, because a lot of them are thinking it's not.
Right. And that, you know, they're in their professional life, humanly so. And so I love your contribution to the world. So thank you, Mike, for being one of my already favorite podcasts that I've been on. And I'd love to come back.
My goal has been achieved, at least one of them.
You're not supposed to have favorite children, but there's some that you really, really enjoy. Well, yeah.
I totally. Okay. So since you said that, I got to share this.
And then I'll tell you my coffee story if you want.
Oh, yes, please. We'll do that too before we sign off. I posted something, I think it was yesterday. Let me see if I can pull it up. It was, I wish my siblings would stop calling me spoiled just because I'm the baby of the family. I am the youngest. The fact is, my parents kept having children until they found one they liked. It's not my issue.
Love that. I love that. That is great. That is great.
So what is this coffee story? Yeah, bring it.
Yeah,
Let's hear it.
It's when I sit with strong cups of coffee, two big ones every morning, often on the deck looking at the river. So
are you sure you're not German in any way? I mean,
I don't know. I have a weird disease called hemochromatosis, which is a mouthful, but basically caffeine keeps the iron from attaching to my organs. So actually, therapeutically, it's all right. I get to drink coffee every day.
Okay.
But because of the idea of wakefulness, one of my readers is like, because I put that in the book, in the meditation section, I just said, I sit every day with my cup of coffee and my reader's like, Katherine, don't you think it should be herbal tea? And I'm like, give me a break. It's not herbal tea, it's coffee. And if somebody doesn't want my book because I'm drinking coffee on my deck rather than herbal tea, right?
There's way too many stigmas around that. It just drives me nuts. I'm a tea drinker. I got away from coffee. Oh, good for you. I need the caffeine. Have a good day.
Yeah, I love my caffeine, right?
Yeah. And actually, it's become a comfort food for me because it's like I just drink it to drink it. Plus, I do intermittent fasting, so this is black. You know, I put nothing in it. I keep it clean. I don't eat for 16 to 20 hours at a time, depending on the day. Anyway, going back to the book and what you actually put in there in the coffee story.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, again, thank you, Mike, so much, and please reach out anytime to have
finish the story. Finish the story, because you were talking about the person came back to you and said, shouldn't it be herbal tea?
Right. And I'm like, this book is all about authenticity, and you know, that for me, so it not only had to stay in, it was kind of like putting on the back of the book that I attempted suicide, but it's not a book about suicide, or telling my readers that I, you know, was a food addict and weighed 200 pounds and had to get that right. Like just you know, I'm not performative in the book, and there isn't, you know, to me, I don't know, it's like the idea of like the Midwesterners that could pick up a book on wakefulness and go, oh, thank God she drinks coffee. Because if there's somebody from Portland, Oregon that only drinks tea, Portlandia, and, you know, loves chickens, and, you know, I'm not vegan either.
I love chicken. Oh, you mean chicken's live ones? I'm sorry. I'm thinking I love chicken. I eat it every day.
Yeah.
Oh shucks, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you again very much for joining us here on Java Chat. My gosh, guys, if you can find her, follow her. We'll give you the links down below. As always, down in the comments. If you guys have questions, by the way, just know that you can always put questions down below. We will either forward them over to Katherine, or Katherine, if you want to follow this on YouTube, we do get questions.
Okay.
Feel free to answer them directly and get them over to your website or whatever to get more information. If you're watching on YouTube and you're not a subscriber yet, there's a button right there that says subscribe, and there's also a little bell there. Hit that bell because that tells you when we're bringing up another episode, okay? We usually do premieres on it, so pay attention, guys. It's we publish, I think, every Monday and Thursday. We're actually falling behind. We might have to do a third day of publishing. That would be cool. And if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, make sure you download or subscribe, whatever that is. If you're listening to us on Anchor, which is where we home base our recordings, anchor.fm, feel free to make a donation and support our little podcast. Every little bit helps. You know how we always like to end these? We always say the same thing. And it's because we mean it. We love every one of you. We appreciate every one of you for watching, for listening, for downloading, for subscribing, whatever it is. And if you can share this out, please do, because somebody out there is going to want to hear what was just said by our guest today. I keep forgetting I'm reversed. What was just said by our guest today. Share it out. Give it to other people to pick up the golden nuggets that you may have picked up, or some more that you may not have. It's all good, and it's okay. So, for Katherine Jansen-Byrkit, I'm going to have to get so used to that. My goodness. For Katherine Jansen-Byrkit, myself, Coffee with Mike, stay up, stay safe, stay healthy, and live. From both of us to all of you. Ciao for now.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening to Coffee with Mike on Java Chat. Tune in weekly to this podcast for the next episode. You can also download or subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. A production of Oasis Media Group, LLC. Located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.